and you got started in this effort.
Happy to, Carrie, and thank you. And I'm quite impressed with the group here, and I'm delighted to be here. I think this is a wonderful room and a wonderful setup for the Zoom. And hello to everybody in Zoom land. And please join us with comments. So I'm a parishioner at St. Anthony of Padua Catholic Church, and we became aware of the predatory lending issue a few years ago, and we encountered Carrie Smith and Self-Help Credit Union in advocacy in this space. And our efforts have gone in two directions. One is to create this charity called MICAH, which facilitates loans for people in distress. And the other has been legislative advocacy. And we've worked with Carrie and this group called the South Carolina Fair Lending Alliance to go in that direction. One of the things that comes up is just how widespread the problem is of predatory lending and why it is a problem. And Carrie, I'll ask you to start there.
Well, one of the things that we've really learned over since about 2019 in particular is that cost predatory loans are actually contributors to things like homelessness, eviction, and folks caught up that decide that are in these loans are twice as likely to file bankruptcy. So as we're working to try to build wealth, or our citizens are trying to build wealth, we were running into this issue with people being tied up in debt to a degree that it was much greater than we had thought. Do you want to share, Mark?
I will. And one of the things is we think it's pretty straightforward to go out and take out a loan and read the fine print and know what you're getting into. And we're all adults doing this. But what we found is that when people are under stress and when they're isolated and when they're embarrassed, sometimes they don't have that clear judgment, and it's possible for unscrupulous lenders to take advantage of them. And that's what we see. We see people who get in a debt trap and they pay interest upon interest, and they just can't get out of it, but they're too embarrassed to ask for help.
And with these folks that we've been working with through MICAH, what we've learned is, well over 50% of the individuals couldn't afford a loan if the interest rate was zero. And I think what we've learned through the MICAH program is that for all of those folks, a loan was not the correct solution for them. And the volunteers at MICAH, I can tell you, they are extraordinary in leveraging community resources to meet needs for folks so that they don't have to have a loan. And Mark, talk about a little bit about how you've leveraged your network to get these, and they're called neighbors. They're not counselors or mentors. And I think that's really important because they don't just help evaluate the need, but they also walk alongside the individual throughout their situation.
So let me describe then how MICAH works. And David Quast is our board chair, and he really set up our faith-based approach to this. And the key is to have individual parishioners volunteer their time to meet with people who are in distress, and we refer to them as neighbors. And one of our mentors, by the way, is here. Jim Stavrakis is one of the many mentors we have at St. Anthony. Maybe 15 or 20 have been mentors over the 3.5 years we've been doing this. And these are parishioners whose qualification is good adult common sense and a good heart. So we're not the financial experts. Carrie and the people at Self-Help Credit Union are the financial experts. But we have some good common sense and life experience among us. And Carrie was the one who taught me the saying that you can't borrow your way out of debt. So if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And sometimes there are other approaches. So the first step is for the MICAH mentor to sit down with a volunteer and to talk through the situation and figure out what's going on. And at some point, we try to rough out a budget of how much money is coming in and how much is going out. and whether the problem at hand would be best served by a loan or maybe something other than a loan and making other decisions. When we when we come to the conclusion the loan is a good idea, then we don't actually take out the loan. We take the person over to Self-Help Credit Union and they sit down with Carrie and her officers, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, and because of the partnership and the way that MICAH works with individuals, they've done a lot of the financial, really looking at the situation. And what we have is a revolving loan fund at Self-Help that the MICAH folks have set up. And so we're able to do, if they determine that the individual can afford the loan, we actually put the loan on our books and we charge just 4% over whatever the savings rate is for that individual. Now, to give you some perspective of what interest rates we're talking about, we had an individual just in the last couple of weeks that had an auto title loan. Their interest rate was 177%. It was on a 2013 Dodge Charger. Her monthly payment is $799. They wrote the loan for 48 months, which would have meant over that 40, they would have paid back $48,000 on this vehicle. And the woman did not have bad credit. In South Carolina, what is average credit? So so those are the kinds of things that we're seeing. And what makes it so egregious is the fact that these lenders add all the interest up front. And this individual had paid for about 5 months and had paid back almost $5,000, which is what was borrowed, and had not touched 1 penny of the principal of that loan. So when we talk about this particular type of lending, it really does put a person, they can't ever save any money because they have nothing left. So I think we've got to work hard in trying to figure out how can we help folks avoid that in particular. And Mark, what is the #1 reason that folks come to MICAH, or do you see a certain trend of the need for a loan?
So the needs that we've encountered generally come from that there's a food pantry at St. Anthony, and people come to the food pantry and they meet with our caseworkers who are retired social workers. Julia Mullen is the leader of that group. And they talk to people and find out what their situation is. And they refer people to different agencies in town, including Mill Village. And there's a wonderful interaction between United Ministries and Miracle Hill and Goodwill and various direct service agencies. And we send people where they need help. The people who have a small loan or amount of money up to $1,500 and a source of income that we think that they might be able to take out a loan and pay it off in a reasonable time, then we sit down with those people and say, let's figure out how to do this. When you take a 5% loan and pay it off over 12 months, the payments aren't that tough. And people can get through that expense. It turns out the car repairs are the overwhelming issue in transportation, and about half of all the encounters we've had in 3.5 years are revolved around transportation somehow.
And that's been our experience too, is that seems to be the driver, no pun intended, to transportation for these type of loans. I think, one thing we do want to share is in this work, we found out last fall through a study from the Dyer Institute of Coastal Carolina that looked at this type of lending in the state. And they found that nearly 400,000 South Carolinians are mired in these type of loans that are 60 days or more delinquent. Now, that's about 10% of our adult population. So this is This is a huge issue in our state. And what we do know from studies, it shows that these loans also become a barrier to traditional financial institution, working with traditional financial institutions, because they take the payments out of folks' checking accounts, and a lot of times their accounts get closed because of fees, and then they have a hard time building a relationship with another financial institution because of that, those fees and the accounts being closed. So that is really one of those things where we need to make sure that folks, that do have the access. Through MICAH and all of our, the loans that we do put on our books, we do report to all 3 credit bureaus, and it does establish a new opportunity for them to be within traditional financial markets. And Mark, tell about why this is so important to you and to your group.
Well, and let me continue on that point. So 1 out of 10 adults, 400,000 in a state with 4 million. That's a lot of people. Just count down the row, 10, and there are people in this room and people in our church congregations, people in our neighborhoods, and among our circles of friends, and they are quiet and they're embarrassed about it. So they realize often that they didn't make a good decision, but they don't have a way to solve it, and they're afraid to ask. So that building rapport with people and sort of getting past that first step is hard. And even within families, people are reluctant to tell their adult children or their siblings or their parents about the circumstance they're in. And what we found is that we call it financial mentoring, but it boils down to helping people make a budget. And again, we're not experts, but we have common sense. But we've been able to use some agencies in town that are very good. And I'll put a plug in for the Financial Empowerment Center for Greenville County. So there's Greenville County Human Relations. It's over there in the county square, and they're on the 4th floor. And they have a financial empowerment center that does financial mentoring. You can call them, anybody in the county, and make an appointment, and they'll help you with the budget. I've gone there with my neighbors, and I'm impressed at how gentle and helpful and constructive they are in helping people with that. And I think there's room for huge growth. So when I think of the future of MICAH, and when I think of the kind of direct service that this organization does and others in town do, I think of mentoring opportunities in whatever setting, and of connecting them with places like the Financial Empowerment Center. And then we'll also work on better transportation options.
And along with that, the empowerment centers, and also groups like United Ministries and folks. What we know is this particular issue is a barrier to homeownership. A lot of times I get connected to individuals because they do want to own a home. And as we all know, homeownership is the fastest way for folks to build wealth. And when folks are mired in these loans, they can't save for the down payment, even as 100%, that you hear lenders say, well, we'll do 100% financing. You still have to have a certain amount of money on deposit, because you've got to have your earnest money when you make that offer. You've got to have your credit report fees, your appraisals for your house that you want to buy. So there's a lot of upfront costs. And then also we have the debt to income. So when somebody has, like the person that I shared with you that had the $799 auto title loan, there is no way that they could afford, one, that loan, but also they couldn't afford a mortgage. So home ownership is definitely impacted dramatically in this whole, in our state and in our communities. So it has a ripple effect all across our state and our economy, but mostly to our families. because a lot of folks are tied, you know, either renting, and just really can't get out of that cycle. Now, and on that vein, Mark, what is, has that been your experience? Have you seen some of the folks coming to you that with their dream of homeownership?
I have, and it's really encouraging. And one group of people that we see are the people, what we call our basic small dollar loan up to $1,500. And yes, they would like to get their finances organized. They would like to get on a budget and be able to save money. And yes, many have that dream and that thought or that goal to work forward to. We're also, on a separate note, working with Miracle Hill Ministries, and they have people who have gone through substance abuse rehab, and they are trying to purchase basic transportation. And we're helping some of these individuals in a program called Bridge to Wheels. And Jim Stavrakis, who's here with us today, has taken the lead on that in the MICAH program. And you see people getting on their feet, overcoming substance abuse, holding down a job, getting a car for dependable transportation, and then having that dream of a house or a place of their own in the future. So it is quite encouraging, and I think the key is person to person. I have grown in my mentoring experience, and I'm in a room full of people who are also doing direct services and person to person contact. And I think we all know how important it is, and I'll just endorse that here.
Well, I think we're getting close to our time. Do we have questions?
Do you want to talk about your mortgage lending product?
Oh, yes, thank you. At Self-Help, because we are all about building wealth, we have created a first generation mortgage loan program. And what makes that one a little unique is we allow multiple down payment assistance programs or layering. So if an individual has, we have down payment assistance, but say they are an employee of one of the hospital systems that has a down payment assistance, we will allow as many down payment assistance as possible, because we want the folks to get as best a lowest mortgage they could. And then we also built in things like a savings account of $2,000, so that when the home borrower, they get, they're into their mortgage 6 months and their hot water heater goes out, so they have a home repair savings account that is funded by us at closing. And then also there's no PMI insurance on our loans, so we make sure that folks are not paying that extra expense. And we don't sell these mortgages on the secondary market. We hold them in our portfolio. We use alternative credit. So we can use cell phone bills or power bills, or if you are renting from a rental company, we can take that statement as well. Just ways, because those are the barriers that we've seen for low wealth folks of being able to get into home ownership. And for those of us that's owned our homes over the years, we've seen that where, we've been able to use the equity in our homes to send our kids to college, or to help build a business even. Maybe they wanted to be a small business owner and they've used the equity in their home. So it is very, it's one tool and resource that really helps families thrive.
So Carrie, let me ask the first question on the chat line. How can we support the Self-Help Credit Union? And one of those ways is by opening accounts and doing our banking there. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, one of the things, if folks want to make, purchase a CD with us, that just helps us to be able to make these loans. But any, sharing, what Self-Help does with folks that but the biggest thing is deposits, so that we can fund these mortgages and to do these loans in our community.
Karen, you also talk about like not just the people here, but businesses, nonprofits, churches, and deposits?
Oh, yeah. So the question from the audience here was, could we just talk about some of the folks that have supported, this particular mortgage loan product? We have several churches that have put capital deposits with us, but we also have a lot of businesses and individuals that have also stepped up to the plate, and a lot of our nonprofits that, we support their clients, but they also support us in this work. So we are very, very appreciative to those that have joined us in this mission of helping to build wealth in our communities.
Other questions or comments? We're interested in feedback. So I got a lot of hot. Yes, ma'am.
So we're talking more about the score you could make, because the credit score might be subpar, they don't seem to that situation. So what do you have for people who want to
That's a great question. The question was, how do folks that have maybe poor credit score, how could they help improve the credit score and maybe move past some of this? Well, at Self-Help, we do offer credit building products, both a credit builder loan, which is basically a reverse savings account, where you do the loan and we put the proceeds into a savings account for you. And then you make your monthly payments, and you can choose 6 months or a year. You can choose between $500 and $2,500, so it just depends. We like to encourage people to do 1,000. And the reason that we do that is because if you follow Dave Ramsey or any of the other personal finance folks, they tell you got to have $1,000 in an emergency savings. So, but the good thing is throughout that life of that loan, we're reporting to all 3 credit bureaus. So you're improving your credit. And then we have a secured credit card product where you just deposit maybe, 200, as little as 250, and that's your credit limit. And you can do that and pay on it, and it builds your credit. We have individuals that have come to us with poor credit, well below 600, and they have actually in about 8 months improved their credit score by 60 to 80 points. Just in that utilizing those 2 products.
And if I may add to that, and I think it's a great question, but the difficult part is before the person starts thinking about their credit score, people who are in a financial mess, getting them in the door at Self-Help Credit Union. Well, I tell people, go down to Self-Help Credit Union, walk in the door, walk up to the person and say, I need financial guidance. Self-Help, Village Engage sent me, or St. Anthony Padua sent me, or whoever the organization is, or Mark O'Rourke sent me, and they will respond to you. And that works. And so just getting people in the door and letting them know that they will be welcome, and they don't have to be Daddy Warbucks to walk in and talk to them.
And that's another thing too. I think folks that have gone through this, there is a lot of shame is what we found. And I hope folks will, if one thing you take away today is there's no shame in that you may have gotten caught up in this. And the beauty is that we can change it. What we know is, I tell people all the time, if you don't control your money will control you. And so it's a matter of just taking the steps to really control your financial future. And we can all do it. And I think that, there's a lot of great credit unions and banks that are really trying hard to help folks with their financial education, getting folks on the right track. But for some of these individuals, unfortunately, they feel like they don't have anywhere else to go. And I hope folks that are listening to this will know, please reach out to, if not Self-Help, reach out to other credit unions and make sure that, you know, don't be ashamed of where, you know, of these decisions, because we're all human and things happen. And like Mark said, when you're in a very stressful situation, we sometimes, you know, we do what's quickest and easiest at the moment to move past it. But you're not destined for where you are today. Is
Question or comment?
I have both a question and a comment. So I just wanted to put a plug for the credit builder program, I believe, which is like a savings program. So Community Works does this also for small business owners. And I was unaware that, you know, even, you know, being an entrepreneur, that there would be a need to build my business credit, to have business credit, and I never even thought about that because it's kind of a side thing. And so that program apparently is being underutilized, but a very, very easy way for you to be able to build credit and build your savings for your business. So I definitely appreciated, you know, learning about Community Works program, and I'm sure that they cooperate, collaborate with self-help to do that. And my other, I guess, comment / question was that Carrie actually informed me also in the past, because I'd heard from people who had gone to some of these lenders to get loans because they needed the money quickly, whether it was for like a, you know, car repair or some other emergency that came up, that you know, it wasn't necessarily that you had to wait. You know, my thought was they go because they need it quickly, and they can always go to those places and get it quick. But you know, you informed me that, you know, there really isn't that long delay if you were to go to. Can you talk about that?
I'll respond to that. So when we set up MICAH, that was our big deal, is we got to be able to respond to an emergency in 24 hours. And what we learned is that the emergencies really aren't 24-hour emergencies, that there is time to sort this out. And to do it right, it takes a little while to gather the documentation, to set up the meetings at the credit union, and we are able to meet people's needs. But it's not about a 24-hour. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to sort things out. And as difficult as these situations are, they're usually not 24-hour situations. Even a car repair is not that short notice.
And I think that's one of the things that folks, what we talk about is a pause, because a lot of times people do feel like desperate in the moment. And we, you know, that taking that pause, you can really evaluate. And what the neighbors do and what we do is help navigate people. So if it's rent, you know, are you communicating with your landlord? And we help do that a lot of times. Or if it is a car repair, a lot of times, you know, people get the car repaired and it's not necessarily fix what needs to be fixed, or they don't go to the most economical place to get it fixed. And that, I think that's what the neighbors have brought in to this, because they've got a network of repair places and folks that can get the car in to a reliable, reputable, and cost-effective place. So I think all of us, you know, when we're looking at a situation like that, where it feels like an emergency, take the pause and reach out for help, because like Mark said, what we found is there is time, but you have to be proactive sometimes, even if it's a loan, you know, if you've got an outstanding loan or something, but we can help navigate that with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I have a question about your Bridge to Wheels.
Yes.
Is that program only for ex-substance abusers, or is it open to the public, and what are the requirements?
As of today, it's limited to guests in the Miracle Hill program. So that includes people at various degrees of involvement with Miracle Hill. We hope to open this up, though, to a wider audience. So we're not there today, but we do think that this business of helping people get affordable cars in the $5,000 or $6,000 range is a place where we want to go, but we're not quite there for the general public. we are, in terms of interest, we're always interested in people who are, think that being a mentor might be something they like to do. And we're particularly interested in people who like cars and all the stuff about cars and looking at cars and evaluating cars. I think that's going to be a bigger part of our future.
So we put in Bridge, Miracle Hill does have a car dealership there, they use cars on Wade Camp,
Yeah, I'm very familiar with them, but
and they do a good job of trying to make sure the cars are in reasonable condition given their mileage and their age versus other used car dealerships, which are really about getting you to take out a loan, get your insurance with them, and supply you with a very unreliable.
And just for those of you online that probably didn't hear that, Miracle Hill, they actually have a car lot here in town up on Wade Hampton, and they have vehicles that are donated to them, and sometimes I think they even purchase some. So they make sure they're mechanically sound, they have good tires and brakes, and make sure that when folks purchase that vehicle, they're getting a good, reliable vehicle at the time for a good price.
I'll mention, so, I have donated cars, used cars to Miracle Hill. When, you know, it's a car, my children are grown and married, but their first car, if they went off to college and didn't need a car anymore, we have donated it. And so the person making the donation gets a really good tax benefit. And then Miracle Hill, because we're a trusted place that's going to look after the cars. So when you think about, when we hear all of this, you know, to think about what can we do, it's everything from donating a car to Miracle Hill to considering becoming an advisor with MICAH, to putting part of your savings or your church investment portfolio on deposit, cash deposit with self-help. So lots of different ways that the community can help support these programs.
Thank you and for those of you online, Susan was sharing that she does, you know, that they've made donations of vehicles to Miracle Hill because they are trusted. And just a reminder that when you do donate a car, you do get a tax benefit. And that there are, you know, whether you want to give to Miracle Hill or MICAH or make an investment, there's a ton of ways that we as individuals can actually be part of the solution for this, because I think even, you know, with the advocacy on the legislation, that's a huge piece, but there's still a ton of work that needs to be done to help people really thrive in our state. And that's good for everyone. So I think this is great to have these conversations, because I think there's so many ways that people can plug in, whether it's being a neighbor and work with MICAH or donate a car to Miracle Hill that can be utilized. I think, and I think all of us are open for innovative ways that we can meet the needs of our neighbors and our citizens of this state. So I hope this isn't the last conversation. I hope we can keep it going and try to figure out even more innovative ways to help more people move out of poverty.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we can take a deep breath and answer more questions or individual questions. And we can be challenged too. So
Yes.
if it was easy, it would have been figured out a long time ago. So we appreciate your feedback and comments.
Yes.
Thanks. All right, don't step on. And again, as I was mentioning about all that we can do. So we're sitting here at Mill Village Ministries and Mill Village Ministries. So most churches, most nonprofits keep
some of their investment portfolio in cash, and it sits. It's not designed to be used to pay bills. It's part of their investment portfolio, which is part of how the nonprofit or the church keeps its financial status in good stead. And so when we talk about, Mill Village Ministries has put, what have we got? 250,000, 500,000, 350. Mill Village has $350,000 on deposit. This is not a donation. And whether it's done through a CD or a savings account, they pay market rates. So again, all this is doing, all we're doing is saying, well, instead of putting it in a big bank, where they are probably not making mortgage loans to the people that self-help credit unions making mortgage loans to. So I can just take this piece out, or the company can take this piece out and slide it over. So again, it's not a donation. It's fully federally insured. So it's as safe an investment as you can make, and it provides market rates return. So, you know, just for anybody here who's a member of a church, who knows somebody who's a member for once, you know, this is, to me, this is an equity thing that we want to talk to the investment committee at the church, not to the outreach committee. This is the investment committee about how do you make your nonprofit or your church assets work for the community, because you've got power in your assets as well as in your advocacy. So I wanted to highlight a couple of things that are coming up. Our next, on May 26th, we have our next Fourth Friday conversation. And we're so excited today to have Frederick Bobo with us, who is running this amazing newspaper called The Community Informer. And I was so excited to see this first one. I hope people on Zoom can kind of see. It's got a huge picture from the recent goal justice Nehemiah action. So you can see there were nearly 2,000 people in attendance to basically put forth needs that we want our city and county and state elected officials to help us find funding for more affordable housing and find funding for helpline for mental health access. I just love that that's the cover of this newspaper, and that is the topic. Next, on May 26th, we have the two chairs of Goal. So Pastor Stacy Mills and Jennifer Faust-Shiorn are going to be talking with us about Goal and the mission of Goal. So that will be really interesting. And what you find, you know, if you've been to multiple of these conversations, everything is intertwined. So our very first one in January was all about predatory lending. Well, you heard Carrie talking about predatory lending, because predatory lending may be why somebody has gotten mired in some debt and they've gone to self-help or they've gone to MICAH for help extricating themselves from a car loan with 150% interest rate. So, you know, so everything is intertwined, because if you get mired in that debt, you're going to have trouble with your car, with your housing. Quick update. We are gearing up the Fair Lending Alliance, which we kind of talked, we've been trying to keep everybody up to date on what's going on with that. So the bill that we had introduced into the Senate is not going any further, but we are already very excitedly plotting and planning for the start of the new legislative session. So there'll be a new 2-year legislative session that starts in January. So what that means is we can have our legislation reintroduced in January, and we've got 2 years, not just a year. We've got 2 years to try and work it through both the Senate and the House and get it to the governor's office. So this is the advocacy piece where we need legislative protection to keep lenders in our state from using predatory lending practices. There's certain things that they are doing, like what we call churning loans. And like what Carrie was talking about, somebody gets in a loan and they're only paying interest up front. And the problem is when that lender says, oh, guess what? I'll give you a little bit more money and we're going to renew and we're going to renew and we're going to renew your loan. The person never pays the loan off. They never get out of debt. And that's something that we don't want these lenders to be able to do. So We'll keep everybody informed on kind of what's coming for the next legislative session, because we have, all I can say right now is we have big plans. And a big part of it is going to be really, really firing up the faith community around the state. Also, on October 16th, we are having our second Faith and Justice Forum. So we had our first one last year that has all those topics, or what are feeding our topics for this year. And we really, since this is an election year, and there is it's even more difficult to have calm, measured discourse with a lot of people. So our big focus for this fall, for our October 16th event, is finding common ground. And it's going to be very different from last year's event, because it's going to be finding common ground through the arts. So as we did last year in this event, we are really interested in centering young people. So we are partnering again with 2 high schools. We're partnering with Legacy Early College and Greenville Tech Charter for the fall. We had a singer-songwriter who opened us up last year, Kashana Armstrong, who is very, very gifted. She's from Nashville. She is going to be working with students, 20 students from each of these high schools before the event. They're going to go through a series of workshops, and they're actually going to write original songs that they are going to perform for us at this event. Kashana is going to talk about the power of music to bring people together. It's a way we can find common ground. We may disagree on something, but we may like the same kind of music. You know, anybody that's ever been to a concert or it sat in church, it stirs us. It stirs something from within inside. So we're going to talk about how music brings people together. Then we're going to have a poetry writing workshop. So we've got 2 well-known local spoken word poets. A lot of you may have heard of Moody Black. So Moody Black is going to join together with Melissa St. Clair. The 2 of them are already working now. So what I'm really excited about is we're going to come together this year, and the high school students are going to be joined in with the community members, as opposed to being on a separate track like they were last year. So we're going to get to write poetry together, and we're talking about even creating an anthology, a published book, so we could have, if people wanted to have their poetry published in a book that they could buy, or that we could provide. So we're going to be doing that. And then around lunch, we're also going to be sitting together, and we're partnering with an organization some of you may have heard of called My Neighbor's Voice. And My Neighbor's Voice has events that are centered around a meal or a cup of coffee or a beer. And the goal is everyone gets a question, and everyone at the table gets a different question. And your goal is to listen to the people at the table that you're with, answer their question. You're not going to respond. So you're not to be thinking about, how would I answer that question? You're not to be thinking about, okay, I want to ask him this question. There's no debate. It is all about deep listening. And I don't know how many of these sessions that I've been to so far. Every single time I go to a My Neighbor's Voice event, I come away just mystified at what the experience feels like to deeply listen, and to not have my brain churning about what question am I going to ask, or what comment am I going to make, or how am I going to answer it. I am just listening deeply. And it strikes me as to how little time I spend deeply listening. So we're going to actually be able to do this in community with the high school students, which I think will be really, really powerful. So it's going to be different from last time. We have some information sheets for people who are here. Not only do we want people to come, and we want people to spread the word, we are also looking for sponsors for this event. Sponsors who anywhere from $1,000 sponsor to $20,000 sponsor. And the reason, what we have decided to do is, this is going to be the Village Engage annual event. Instead of us hosting a party we have decided things like what we're doing, this finding common ground through the arts. That's what Village Engage is all about. There will be a meal that will be really powerful where people get to spend time with high school students. So this is going to be our annual fundraiser, because right now we're dependent really solely upon one foundation funding us, and that makes us at risk. If that foundation decides they're not going to fund us, we're in trouble. So we want to have another revenue source where people are, and this event is going to be generating the revenue source for Village Engage to do all of the community conversations. We actually sponsor a lot of Just Faith community groups where people in the community don't have to pay for the program or the books. And so these sponsorship dollars will help that. So lots going on. Thank you for being with us. We are going to end a few minutes early, and tune in a month on May 26th for our next one. Thank y'all so much.